Hello, welcome to episode 3 podcast of the Justin Johnston Show. I'm Justin Johnston. I'm a commercial real estate broker operating in Salt Lake and Utah counties of Utah for the past 27 years. This is Blake Moore. He's my coach, producer, manager of this content. He's what makes this happen every week, and also is a licensed real estate agent that is up and coming and does a lot of the research and content that we provide each podcast. So welcome, and would like to have you, like and subscribe. That always helps us. You may or may not understand that, but it may or may not make sense, but it does help us provide and get better content and future guests that we've are looking to have on the show that I think will be enjoyable to everybody. For that. Now today, our podcast, we brought it up in a previous episode, or maybe one of the shorts that we released, and it is senior housing, the opportunity of senior housing. We are really excited with this. This came under, I think the last video that we put out was the little opportunity zone, right? The opportunity that we see as an opportunity. Look, we don't have to take advantage of all this. No, our clients don't have to do this. Especially with this, there's going to be a huge shortage with what they're deeming out there as the silver tsunami. Silver tsunami is referencing the aging population, which we'll get into some of those age definitions of what's happening out there. It's, you think that we've got things figured out in development, but there's going to be a huge opportunity to provide the many stages of healthcare, senior housing in the future. First of all, I think it's important to define what senior housing is. A lot of people maybe immediately people would think of memory care or grandma and grandpa that are
assisted living,
assisted at a level that you're going to visit grandma and grandpa, or you are grandma and grandpa and you're thinking about checking in, or you don't know if you're grandma and grandpa still. I hate to see those commercials that people are putting out where the father's having a discussion with his daughter and he's like, "Oh no, hang in there. Things are going to get better." Oh, it's really tough, and find out at the end of the little commercial that he's the father of the daughter that who's your dad? Do I know your dad? Oh, anyway, that's heartbreaking on some of that stuff. Why I'm laughing, I don't know. It's reality, I guess.
Yep.
And so the 4 identified, and I think opportunities. Some people have tried to plug into this 55 and older, but that's so the 4 phases that we're going to identify today is just that. Anybody 55 and older, they've got communities. These projects have, but not limited to, there's been a lot of various things, but the idea is that you've got basically a multifamily project. Some of them connected. There are some that have smaller individual homes, but it's written as a 55 and older community, trying to weed out the kids that are going to be, it is a different project if you've got children that are going to be out on bikes and playgrounds. Of course, these will have playgrounds, but there'll be more for grandkids when they come over, right? So that you can identify in your own mind, think of what it would be different than a multifamily project that anybody could live there with the types of amenities, clubhouse, maybe a larger clubhouse that you could have guests and people over and things like that, right? And one interesting thing about that that has come, and the exact figures aren't as important other than maybe a normal multifamily project where people are going to live 2-3 years. And they're moving on either to a home or another project. The opportunities come up, they've moved on. They maybe got a couple kids, now they need to get a bigger place. That age group and the rest of the market in multifamily is 2-3 years, and they're moving on. And in the 55 and older community, at the level that we're talking about now, where people are choosing to move there, they were empty nesters, and they're saying, hey, let's get rid of this big house, we're going to move in and have a better, maybe a lifestyle, travel a little bit more, they're staying there at least around 7 years, 8 years. And it works out. I think it's one of those things that probably doing all those things, they're still working, they're still playing and traveling.
Yeah.
You blink, 5 years goes by, another 5 years, you're 10 years. The
Yeah.
average is around 7 years living at 55 and older.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes sense
Yeah.
from that standpoint. Then there's the secondary, 55 and older, right? So the second class that we define here is, it's independent, 55 and older, meaning that but it's got more amenities, it's more enhancements. Maybe I don't want to say necessarily geared for widows or where somebody's doesn't have a spouse, they're not necessarily living there together. There's a lot more enhanced amenities there. Most of them are planning to have a barber shop, a hair salon, maybe a little workout facility that's going to be on the project, the property there. And one of the big things that's different with these is there's some enhanced amenities that would be more for activities, barbershop, hair salon, maybe a full-service beauty salon. There'll be more activities, classes that may include pottery or making things. Maybe have that bingo. A lot of activities that are geared around it. I think one of the big things that probably separates them is that there is generally a facility that maybe instead of having a full kitchen in each one of the units, there's smaller kitchenettes that people could warm up food or do things. But the second tier of senior housing would be 55 and older with a commercial grade type kitchen that people can come in, maybe have like you see in some of these restaurants. They've got the cafeteria, the buffet that they can get stuff, but you can also maybe for breakfast go over and order an omelet or have pancakes made and have some variety that way. And that would be kind of that second level. It's where people aren't leaving as much. This is kind of where they're at, and they enjoy being in this community, right? And so that's the second level. Now, the third level is kind of that next level that we talked about before, an assisted living, but independent living. My daughter works at one of these facilities. People actually may have their own car. They may be able to come and go as they want. They're fully independent. If they want to plug into the amenities or entertainment or things like that going on, they can do that. At the same time, at least at her facility, which will go into the next one, but as they're getting, and maybe as they need some of the help with medications or even a shower, there's people there that are staff. We're talking and not just a staff of amenities or having third-party barbershops and salons and things like that. There's going to be actual staff members there helping. And so just identifying that, you can kind of imagine what that would take as you're looking at different opportunities to do developments with this. That's really the key of why we're trying to point out this stuff. Not to tell you how to run these facilities, but say, okay, I've got a good idea, I think, of what my niche is going to be to provide this. Now, obviously, the fourth stage, which is the same type of facility my daughter works at, they've got two parts of it. One that's a little more independent, the other where it's maybe a little more guarded. They've got more staff members for that wing of the facility. Memory care, they're going and trying to get maybe just the basics, not classes on pottery, but classes on cognitive things that maybe are helping them plug in and still have independence as it's gradually getting less and less that they can just do for themselves and have that full transition. Now, what would be the big difference? You're probably going to have not just helpers there in some level, they're going to have a skilled care facility type CNA practitioners, medical assistants, probably a registered nurse, and probably a full-time administrative staff there that can handle or get a hold of family if there's issues of emergency and so on and so forth. Obviously, each one of these, as you progress forward, is going to have a higher operating cost and a different business model that all folds in.
So would you say on the more you go up these levels, you said the higher it is, it's going to cost more to run. Would you say that because the older people probably aren't leaving as quickly as maybe the 55 and up, how it's maybe 7 years, the last one, they're probably in there for life, we'll say, that maybe there's a better opportunity cost in those because there's going to be less vacancy, the people are going to be staying there longer? Or would you say that maybe the younger ones are going to be more profitable because you don't have to hire as much?
That's a good question. I think so. There's a strategy, and some of it is going to be a niche facility. I think there's going to be some operators that are not going to want or have the desire to run a specialty level of that type of caregiving, and I think that people will develop that niche. I like the opportunity. And we'll get into some of how you can transition and get into these. I would say if you're looking at something, if you feel really comfortable with traditional multifamily developments, you're 55 and older, maybe with up to the commercial kitchen facility would be the niche for you. And that's a perfect segue because that is, so what we've identified really is how do you get, where's that opportunity? Where do you make that choice of, okay, I understand multifamily, or it's something I want to get into. I feel really comfortable in that, building the facility, buying the ground, putting the development in, have a good idea of what people are looking for that floor plan, right? And amenities, what works. Once you cross that threshold, even getting, I think, to the 55 and older additional services, you've got really a separate part of the business. And so it breaks down to two businesses. And whether or not, I've seen several people make that transition over the last couple of years into that is, I think if you can provide it all under one roof, whether that's you create a partnership with an operating company that understands that business inside and out, and you approach them and say, look, getting the facilities for these places is really difficult, right? To have them designed, built, it takes a lot of cash infusion to do that. And if your specialty is in the care of the elderly, the silver tsunami, which is happening, it's happening now, and I've got some figures about how many more. In fact, I can just say that right now. It's the baby boomer generation is, we have 10,000 people in this country turning 65 every day.
Wow.
Right now in the country.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a staggering number
Yeah.
when you think about it, right? And that's been happening for a while, last several years, and I mean, it was a huge generation, and they're on the tail end of that before the Gen Xers come into this, which are going to transition as well.
Yeah.
But the Gen X, we're not as big of a generation as them. They still, people are living longer, and this, I don't think we've got this totally figured out. This is really just from the real estate opportunity of what is going to happen, because income, retirement, the housing structure, family structure, we talked about that. You're saying, what's the right niche? Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of studies that show people may retire from Utah. Yeah. They keep their house in Utah, but they want to go down more in the Sun Belt. Mm-hmm. Florida, Arizona, a lot of people go down to Phoenix from this market. But there's a Sun Belt market that is catering. People want to go down. They don't want to deal with the cold weather. But they're not planning to go down there forever. So they might keep their home, let some of their kids live there. It's a very interesting. Once you get into that upper care facility, now you're almost targeting not just the old people, but the people that are in their care, right? Yeah. The kids or maybe a legal advisor for these people that are
Yeah.
planning their will and what they're doing. It's a very interesting thing once you get in and look at this, which I encourage you to go in and look at everything you can about this. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop them. Tomorrow, there's going to be 10,000 more baby boomers that turn 65. Well, by 2033, they're turning 75, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be some of them that die there, but what a huge opportunity, right? They don't want the same facility. So it's interesting. 7 years, they retire. Maybe they go down to Phoenix. Maybe one of the spouses passes on, one of the partners, whatever. And they're like, well, maybe I'll stay down here. Maybe it's time to go back, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that are factoring into why they're staying there. I think a lot of them would like to stay there longer, but they are getting back to family.
Yeah.
A lot of times, even here, they want to come back to where they have lived, raised their family, and that might include, ultimately, as they get right to the very end, they maybe want to even go home and have hospice come to their home,
Yeah.
right, in the final days or weeks.
Uh-huh.
And so it's an interesting thing to look into. Having said that, there's two sides of this business. We've already identified it. There's an operating side, and I think that's the key. If you're just on the real estate side, one way or the other, the best avenue to tackle this is to go create a partnership, an arrangement, an agreement with them, identify the people that are operating in town now, or those that are coming, say, look, hey, you're not in this market yet. If you come out to Utah or to Pennsylvania or wherever you live right now, you can say, I will provide you the facilities. I'll build, I'll own the real estate, we'll sign a lease back. And so this is really where the opportunity is, right? You're transitioning and bringing together that two sides of this business, and I think that's the goal. Now, 55 and older, those communities might have ownership, right? But at the third and fourth phase, there's not ownership, generally speaking. There
Yeah.
could be, I guess, but the goal is they know they don't have a long time to live, but they're trying to get the best quality of life without burning it up and having to take care of the yard and do
Yeah.
things around the house that they're not able to do anymore, right? There is a natural progression as to why they're shifting, right?
Yeah.
And so that's key. The operating company, of course, just to identify those types of things. They hold the licenses, they hire the staff, they carry all the insurance for the business side of it, the liability insurance. They own within the facilities all the beds, furniture, kitchen equipment, whatever medical things would be brought in there. And one other issue, that they're the ones that hold the license to be compliant, right?
Yeah.
So the developer or the real estate company, even though they could be owned by the same group, that side of it is what's going to be compliant with the state. Now, every state, and I think they're all coming in line with them, but that will, I guess, fold into all of the other factors that say there's so many CNAs that you have to have, skilled, experienced people, that you can't just have a normal staff person help the elderly people shower or go give them meds. You have to be licensed, and so you have to manage all that, the compliance. They're changing. It used to be, you could have a nurse that was over 50 residents as long as you had so many CNAs. Well, that number's getting smaller, or more. You're going to have more staff as
Yeah.
time goes on, which creates another problem, which we'll touch on at the very end of this, of another opportunity that plays into that. But so that's it. So they're managing the activities. They've got the staff doing that. They own the bus that takes them to these different community events and things like that, if that's what they need, if they don't have their vehicles. That's the operating company. The property company, there is some additional management that they'll need there, but they're going to build the facilities. They're going to own the facility. They're going to structure a lease that, as a landlord, to lease long-term to these care facilities on the operating side. Normally, and it could go back and forth, but I think the right structure, that at least I see that works best, is they do handle all of the physical maintenance on the building so that there is a real separation between the operating company the care company, and the real estate. So all the property management stuff, things you can think of, things that need to be, updated in the building, taken care of.
Yeah.
May even contract the janitorial. That may be a little bit of a gray area, but snow removal, mowing the lawns, taking care of the sprinkler systems, making, if the roof has any problems, air conditioning units, heaters, all of that stuff's gonna fold in. So you, of course, would wanna structure the leases that way so that it's all taken care of. But, so that's that's the structure. Operating company, real estate company, providing the facility for that. Now, I already brought up 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day. And that might even be on the low side. Now, so what opportunity is there? I mean, obviously not everybody's moving into these facilities right now, but right now in the United States, coast to coast, there's about 40 or 50,000 units of the type that we're talking about that are being built right now. Now, you may want to check these numbers, but from our research, and of course, this is somewhat of a business model that we're putting together, so this is fairly accurate for round numbers, but we feel like if you take the number of people, elderly people that are turning 65 every day, project that out for the next 10 years from now, build 40 to 50,000 units every year, you'll see, if not maybe higher, there's going to be about a shortage of 1 million to 1.5 million units for what needs to be built. Now, there's going to be lots of ways to provide that. We think that there's going to be plenty of opportunity to do that with almost all new facilities, some way or the other, right? Maybe this 55 and older communities that have been built recently could transition and have some of these amenities added to it, right? So, I mean, there's going to be some turnover of some properties. We'll identify that as well, where you can look at maybe if you are not, maybe there's a perfect hotel that's got a kitchenette, some extended stay hotel that's in a perfect area. Well, you may want to acquire that building, right? Instead of building it, it's got the kitchenettes built in there. Most of those, well, all those facilities have elevators.
Yeah.
That's a perfect transition, right? So, whether you buy the hotel or you're going to buy the ground or you're converting something else, it appears, and it goes back to the regulations with how many staff that you have to have and the size of units, it appears that somewhere between 75 and 125 units per facility is a great number. It just works out well. Now, at 125, I've known some that are even up towards 150 or larger, and that seems it's a pretty big facility. Yeah. I would not want to manage one of those. I probably personally want to be on closer to the 75, but our research has shown that less than about 75, it's harder to make it profitable, right? So, and 75 units is not that big of a facility, but we're talking about something that's going to progress with staff, employees, and all the administrative. It's going to be an issue there that will be more complex than that. So at least 75 to 125, we think is a perfect little sweet spot if you keep it within that range. Now, what would make that? Now, you could push that, right? In multifamily, developers push that. They want to put as many units as they possibly can get. Now, that always is the plan. But if you have regulations that would say, hey, for that one extra unit that you add, you might have to add a staff of 9 to 10 people just because you crossed over that line, right? So it's going to be, you're going to have to get that kind of fine-tuned. Yeah. And maybe you just do it, you combine a couple of units that maybe you can do to where it's not an additional unit, it's just a larger unit to where maybe some of the people are couples that are still alive and living together, right?
Pay a little more.
Pay a little more, which is exactly, I mean, that's already a structure that's being used. I think this is going to get more defined, and hey, they're adults. Maybe they'll want to shack up and have a roommate, you know, which does make sense as well,
Exactly.
shack up's not the right terminology to use there. Though there is a lot of shacking up, I've been told that happens in those communities. And they are adults, and so, yeah, they can do what they want. No. So, so let me, so I talked about the hotel conversion. That just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got it there. It would not be maybe something where you're going to lease to a normal multifamily. Somebody that's a young couple with kids. It's just not the facility. The kitchenette facility is not, maybe a burner or two, a small dishwasher, maybe. I mean, I've stayed at different ones where it's been kind of the gamut, but it's on the low end. I mean, it's not a full kitchen. You know?
Exactly.
And it's really only got a small living area. Sometimes the bed is inside there, right? So it really does work well. A hotel conversion could be a perfect scenario if it was already the extended stay. Some of them with some of the larger rooms, there's lots of different hotels that are built around the country that could maybe, with slight modifications, you could do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good one building per purchase. It's going to have the elevators. You're going to have plenty of parking there for staff and other people that would be coming. You might not be able to add the amenities there for grandkids to play or some of those types of things, but just use your imagination of what you maybe can and can't do. And there's going to be different price points for these people, right? I mean, not everybody can afford everything with all the amenities.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I think the goal is probably not to go, and I know this would change for some markets, but more than 5 stories, so something mid-rise, 2 to 5 stories, with that commercial kitchen, a medical area, full staff. That should work pretty well. So we come to that now. I held off maybe how you would develop this. So let's say you find the perfect property that you can, it's an upgrowing area or an existing with some expansion in a market. You want to acquire the ground. You figure out so many acres works perfect, right? For this 55 and older community that really could go. Maybe you build something that has a transition between 2 communities that could be one ultimately one day, right? Or if the ownership on the one, you just have that. Ultimately, the goal is, I think, to build, if you can get the ground and build 55 and older, phase 1, phase 2, you still could rent. There's going to be a lot of people that will want to rent in those facilities, right? Yeah. And maybe they're going to sell the home, transition. Maybe they've never owned a home. I mean, that's a little different from this generation that's going to be doing that. But we talked about what generation? They're turning 65.
Yeah.
10,000 of them every day. We're not talking about 55 and older. Now, it still accommodates them, right? And people are living longer and being healthy. But now we're talking Gen X generation, right?
Yeah.
I'm 53 next month. And so, hey, I could qualify to live in one of those here in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And some days that sounds pretty appealing to me. I've got a big yard and I mow. My wife does most of the mowing and taking care of it. But it's a lot of work to do that and to stay, a lot of work, right, to take care of that. So there's going to be that transition. But if you could get the 55 and older with the amenities, and then you still had, you're already creating your presence in the market. You're creating a name brand, a place that is high-end as far as reputation. That's what a lot of it comes down to. Hey, this is a perfect place to live. You really could come here and transition to each phase until you're there. Well, make sure you buy a little extra ground because like we said in the one opportunity zone, one of the things that's a huge problem, in fact, as you read more about this, you're going to also read the biggest problem is to staff these projects. If you go downtown, is there enough young people in that area that they don't have to travel? So I think it's going to be everywhere. I don't think there's going to be one that's like if you're out in the country, though I think that could be. There's some smaller rural communities, which is, let's face it, that is 80% of the the population, that rural, maybe, but small town America is the majority of
Yeah.
all the people. And so I think that over and over, what I'm reading is having a part of the facility, maybe behind it, that is now a traditional multifamily project, right? How many units could you build there? Well, you can definitely lease to anybody that could live there, but maybe a building or two, or just the one building that you build could staff. It could be for people that could lease. You could offer it as an incentive from the operating company to give them a discounted rent maybe, sign a long-term lease from the facility, so it would be the operating facility that would sign the long-term lease. It's a great business model, right? If you're trying to say, hey, I'm going to do this long-term lease, though we did talk about hotel rates
Yeah.
and what that would be, but it would be an upside for the operating facility. They can offer that to their employees, give them a slight discounted rent or significant maybe to even
Yeah.
get them there, because ultimately they're making their money on the care side. If they can't hire the people and have them there, they're going to suffer from that, right? So,
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm saying with that, that's an entire business model even in and of itself. Let's say you don't want to get into the senior housing silver tsunami. We've targeted and brought up this many times as even a business model for us that we're going to pursue is to have a facility close to, it wouldn't have to be right on site, but very close to where you could go to any of these operators, any of these companies, identify them, go to them and say, if we were to build a 28-unit project that could handle all of your staff, you sign a long-term lease, helps you get the financing. It's a great way to transition into this market.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to get into the multifamily, but it's a great way because the 55 and older senior living, you're providing for the workers to be
Yeah.
there. And I think that's going to be a great opportunity in the future. Having said that, that really is our message for this and an opportunity. We want to share this because we're going to be 1 million to 1.5 million units short
Yeah.
across the country. We want to make people aware of it. We're not worried about missing out on that. I think there's going to be, or, oh, hey, it's a secret. We want to let people know, start thinking about it. There's going to be some huge opportunities for people all across the country. So every market that you're in, you don't have to go to a different market. Find the operators in that market, start providing that, or start identifying, where you could build these facilities or do a hotel conversion. I don't think you're going to miss on these. It's just a matter of buying it right. And people got to pay market for these things, so it's not rocket science. It's a matter of just doing it right, and there's going to be plenty of occupants that are going to need that. We know that just by the statistics of it.
Yeah, so one last thing before we go. I'm curious, how much do you think it costs, maybe you don't know the exact numbers, but to buy one of these and do all the renovations, do everything you need to start getting people into them, both on the housing the staff side and also just providing the actual facility? How much does that cost?
Well, it depends. I mean, we're talking 75 units as a minimum, right? Now, the 55 and older don't have to be that size, but it makes sense. It's going to vary. It's going to vary from market to market, but it's not going to cost any more, than what it's going to build a new facility, right?
Yeah.
It's really so for any developer opportunity out there, right? And I wish I could nail that down for you better, right? Even give some ranges. I mean, I know what you can pay for the ground, at least in this market right now, what we've identified, and maybe we'll bring that up in the future.
Yeah.
Button that down even and say, hey, here's a national average of what it's going to cost right now based on current costs, right?
Yeah.
On projected. But I think the goal here is to actually say the opportunity has been here for a while. We all know where there is senior housing, right? We've seen 55 and older projects come up in every city around us. I was like, really? They're going to build that? Why are they going to get everybody, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people turning older, right?
Yeah.
That's the key. That's what's happening. And there's a lot of different, it's not the traditional family of the 50s, of the greatest generation, right? We
Yeah.
come home and they raise their families and then they die in those homes.
Yeah.
It just isn't that way for lots of reasons. And I think that to identify, I don't know if we know exactly what the perfect facility looks like, but I'm sure there's people that are creative and understand living,
Yeah.
what it actually takes and to design it. So, I mean, you're going to have to get a good architect. You're going to have to get some, maybe just talk to a lot of people. Go to some facilities and say, hey, what doesn't work here,
Yeah.
right? And maybe that's a good way to even go into it. Say, hey, you guys built this facility. You guys, a lot of these people are owner occupants running their business. Say, hey, if you were to do another one and we could work out an agreement, what would you do to change, right? Not everybody's going to open up about that, but you could even talk to the residents. I mean, if you know people there,
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to do what is the most simple,
Yeah.
right? I think sometimes, now, we all go to Google, we start Googling, hey, what about this, and that. But at the end of the day, I think it's not going to cost any more to build them. It's going to be the right design and the right way. And I think, I'm sure there's people out there right now that are better operators.
Yeah.
They're better operators. They run a profit every year, and yet the costs seem reasonable to everybody, to the families, to the occupants. I mean, this is going to be something we're going to have to pioneer a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a problem that hasn't been resolved yet. I mean, we just have something that's transitioned to where, with healthcare and how the trend of that is happening right now. So I think that's it, the opportunity. But I think it's the question is a great question, because what does it cost? What should it cost, right? What's
Yeah.
the range of? So I think we can get some numbers, and in a future podcast, we'll say, hey, if you build what is a one bedroom or what maybe would be a large studio, a large hotel room with a small kitchenette, this is what it's going to cost per unit. Cost, ballpark, and then your ground is going to be on top of that, right?
Yeah.
And improvements if you've got to improve the site significantly. So we need to do that.
Yeah. We'll do
So,
it.
good question. Hey, thanks for listening in. Thanks for staying to the end. Again, I'm going to say, please like, please subscribe, and hey, leave us a comment. Of course, you can reach out to us through other avenues. We've got our email tied to it as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, but in the comment section below, let us know what you think, and anything that you think that maybe we didn't answer or we left out today. We look forward to it. Have a great day. Make life what you want it to be. We're excited for the future, and until the next one, goodbye.